Last summer, I pulled 47 pounds of tomatoes off 2 plants, and I didn't spray them with a single thing. No neem oil, no soap spray, no copper, no organic concoction from the garden center. I haven't sprayed anything in my garden in almost 20 years, and across 45 years of having my hands in dirt, I've never lost a crop to pests. Most folks find that hard to believe because the whole industry is built on selling you something to put in a bottle. Here's what I learned the hard way. You don't fight pests, you crowd them out. I'm going to walk you through the 4 things I do every season in the order I do them. And stick with me, because the last step is the one nobody talks about, and it costs about $1. Here's the thing, those 47 pounds came off 2 Cherokee purple plants in the same south-facing 4x8 raised bed I've been building up for 3 years now. I weighed every harvest on the little digital kitchen scale I use for the camera, and I logged it in a notebook from the first ripe one in mid-June to the last green ones I pulled off the vine in late October. No spray, no bottle, no fight. Just the bed doing what a bed is supposed to do. Most folks get this wrong because they're treating the pests like the problem. The pests aren't the problem. The pests are a symptom. A row of tomatoes with bare soil around them by themselves in a straight line. That's a billboard. Pests find their host plants by 2 things: scent and silhouette. The volatile chemicals a stressed plant gives off, and the visual shape of a monoculture row sitting against brown dirt. If your garden looks and smells like a single-species buffet, every aphid and cabbage moth in the neighborhood is going to RSVP. The move is the opposite. You make the garden unreadable. You crowd them out. I'm going to walk you through 3 steps in the order I do them every season, starting in February. And at the end, I'll give you the 4th step, the $1.29 packet from the hardware store that nobody at the garden center is going to point you toward because there's no money in it for them. Step 1. Feed the soil before you feed the plant. The first warm week of February, when the rain breaks for a few days and the soil isn't squelching under my boots anymore, I go out to both of my 4x8 raised beds with a wheelbarrow, and I top dress every square foot with a 2-inch layer of finished compost. Then, right on top of that, I lay down a 3-inch layer of arborist wood chips. That's it. No tilling, no digging it in, no scratching anything around. I let the worms and the rain pull it down through the season. Now here's the thing. Most folks treat soil and plants as 2 separate problems. They figure they'll plant whatever they're planting, and when it looks a little pale or stressed, they'll scratch a handful of granular fertilizer in around the base and call it done. I did that for years. What I didn't understand back then is that fertilizer feeds the plant for about 3 weeks, but it does not change what the plant is broadcasting. And what the plant is broadcasting is the whole game. A plant that's drawing balanced nutrients out of living soil grows steady. It doesn't get the stress spikes that make it pump out the volatile chemical signals every aphid and whitefly in the neighborhood is tuned into. A plant on a fertilizer drip is basically yelling. A plant on healthy soil is humming. Pests can find a yeller from 40 feet away. The hummer? They walk right past. That's mechanism number 1. Mechanism number 2 is the mulch itself. A 3-inch layer of wood chips hides the bare brown soil completely. Cabbage moths, carrot rust flies, leaf miners, a lot of these pests find their landing zone by spotting bare dirt next to a host plant. Cover the soil, and you scramble their approach. Now, the failure mode I see most is people who hear this and go buy a bag of compost, scratch a thin sprinkle into the top inch, and skip the mulch because it looks messy. That's not feeding the soil. That's seasoning it. You want the 2 inches, you want the 3 inches on top, and you want it down in February before the soil temperature climbs and the first wave of pest eggs start hatching. The result of doing this correctly is a bed of plants that grows at the same pace from April through September, doesn't yellow, doesn't wilt in the afternoon, and reads as background noise to the bugs flying overhead. I'll tell you what, this one step alone, before I got to any of the others, cut what little pest pressure I used to have in half. Step 2. Crowd the bed, never leave bare soil. The minute I put a tomato in the ground in March, I'm already planting around it. I plant on 6-inch centers, which means I'm spacing things about twice as tight as the back of the seed packet tells you to. Between each tomato, I tuck in lettuce, radishes, bush beans, a clump of cilantro, sometimes a low-growing thyme. Every gap in the bed gets filled with something. If I look down at the bed in April and I can see brown dirt anywhere, I haven't done my job yet. Here's the mechanism. Bare soil is a visual runway. Egg-laying insects fly low. They scan for the silhouette of their host plant against an open background, and they land. A bed that's packed wall-to-wall with mixed green growth has no runway. The tomato isn't isolated against brown. It's surrounded by lettuce and radish tops and bean leaves at 3 different heights. The cabbage moth, flying over a packed bed, sees a confused canopy and keeps going. She lands on her neighbor's nice, clean row instead. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, because I thought it too for a long time. The seed packet says tomatoes need 18 inches. The catalog says peppers need 12. Won't the plants compete? Won't they stunt each other? Here's what I figured out the hard way. Those spacing numbers assume you're growing in stressed soil with no biology, and you need every plant to have a private root zone, because there isn't enough to share. In a bed that's been mulched and composted for 2 or 3 years running, the soil is feeding a community, not individuals. Plants pack in closer because there's enough to go around. Gloria has been doing this for 20 years on her balcony in San Francisco, and her pots never have one thing in them. Every container has at least 3 species sharing the dirt: a tomato with basil at its feet and a strand of nasturtium spilling over the side, or a pepper with 2 kinds of lettuce and a clump of chives. She told me once that the day she started thinking of every pot as a little ecosystem instead of a single plant in a holder was the day she stopped losing things to pests. The failure mode on this step is following the seed packet literally. People put 4 tomato plants in a 4x8 bed, give them 18 inches each way, mulch around them, and then leave it that way for the whole season. By June, there's bare mulch between every plant, the canopy is patchy, and the first hornworm that flies over has a clear shot at every leaf. Fill those gaps. Radish goes from seed to pull in 28 days. Lettuce in 45. Bush beans in 55. By the time your tomatoes are big enough to need the room, the quick crops are already out of the bed and in your kitchen. The result, when you do this right, is a bed that looks more like a meadow than a vegetable plot. Step 3. Mix the species in every bed. This is where most folks stop short, and it's where the whole system actually clicks together. The rule I follow is no rows of one thing, anywhere. If I'm planting 4 tomatoes in a bed, those 4 tomatoes are not the only thing in that bed. Around them go basil, at least 2 basil plants per tomato, a clump of chives at each end of the bed, and a French marigold every couple of feet along the edge. Between my brassicas, broccoli, kale, cabbage, I tuck cilantro in early spring and dill once the weather warms up. And here's the part nobody does. I let 1 bolted plant per bed flower out and stay there. A lettuce that's gone to seed. A cilantro that's thrown up its white umbels. A radish that's bolted into pink and purple flowers. That go-to-flower plant feeds the predator insects living on site, and it's worth more standing than it would be pulled. The mechanism on this step is simple once you see it. A cabbage moth doesn't fly around looking for broccoli with its eyes. It locates broccoli by a chemical compound the brassica family releases. Glucosinolates, broken down into mustard oils that drift on the air. A row of broccoli is a fire hose of that signal. A bed where broccoli sits between cilantro and dill, with chives at the corners and a flowering radish in the middle, dilutes that signal below the threshold the moth can detect. She doesn't smell broccoli. She smells confusion and she flies on. Same logic for the hornworm, the aphid, the flea beetle, every pest that targets a single plant family. They're not smart. They're just chemical trackers, and a mixed bed jams their signal. I learned this the hard way. About 6 or 7 years ago, before I had this dialed in, I planted a row of broccoli in the back bed. 8 plants, all in a line, 2 feet apart, nothing between them. Looked beautiful for about 10 days. By day 14, the cabbage worms had found me. By day 16, there were holes in every leaf. By day 20, I was picking green caterpillars off by hand in the dark with a flashlight. And that is not what gardening is supposed to feel like. I lost the whole row. The next year I planted 6 broccoli plants scattered through the bed with cilantro between them, dill on the south end, and chives at the corners, and I pulled clean heads off every single one. Same yard, same soil, same broccoli. The only thing I changed was what was sitting next to them. Gloria figured this out long before I did. Every pot on her balcony has 3 species in it, minimum. Her tomato pot has basil and a creeping thyme spilling over the edge. Her pepper pot has a clump of chives and a French marigold tucked in. She told me once that the day she stopped thinking of each pot as one plant and started thinking of it as a little ecosystem was the day her pest problems disappeared. She has a saying for it. The pests aren't looking for your garden, they're looking for a sign that says food. Don't put up the sign. That one stuck with me. The failure mode on this step is doing one companion pair and stopping there. Folks hear tomato and basil go together, so they plant one basil next to one tomato and call it companion planting. That's not enough. One basil in a bed of otherwise bare mulched tomatoes still reads as a tomato patch to a hornworm moth flying over at dusk. You need density and you need variety. 3 or 4 supporting species per main crop, scattered all through the bed, not lined up neatly along the edge. The result, when you commit to it, is a garden that looks a little wild, a little unstructured, a little like you didn't quite plan it. And that is exactly what you want. Pests can't read it, predators love it, and you walk out with full baskets at the end of the week. Those are the 3 steps I do every season, in order from February through transplant day. Feed the soil, crowd the bed, mix the species. Those 3 give you about 90% of the result. Now, if what I'm walking you through is starting to land and you're realizing the spacing and the pairing is where the real work happens, the full layout for how to do this in a small bed or in containers is in Chapter 7 of my book, The 30-Day Kitchen Scrap Garden Protocol. Chapter 7 is called Scaling Up, From Windowsill to Backyard, and it lays out the companion planting basics for containers and small beds. What pairs with what, how close they go, what to do if you've only got a balcony to work with. It's all in there with diagrams. The whole book is $17 at backyardbuddybooks.com. If you're watching on your TV, the QR code is right there on screen. Go ahead and grab your phone and point it at the screen. I'll wait. If you're on your phone or your laptop, the link is in the description, or you can type backyardbuddybooks.com straight into the browser. Take your time. No rush. All right, let's keep going. Before I give you the 4th step, the one I teased at the start, I want to talk about 3 things I see folks do that undo all of the work we just covered. 3 mistakes, each one common, each one costly. Mistake 1, reaching for the spray bottle the first time you see an aphid. I get it. You walk out, you see 20 aphids clustered on a new growth tip, and your instinct is to do something. Don't. The moment you spray, even with something organic like neem or insecticidal soap, you don't just kill the aphids. You kill the ladybug larvae that were already on their way, the parasitic wasp that laid eggs in 3 of those aphids yesterday, the hoverfly that was about to come in and lay more. You set the whole system back 4 to 6 weeks. The corrective is to leave it alone for 10 days. Walk out every morning, look at the cluster, and look for the little orange and black alligator-shaped things crawling around. Those are ladybug larvae. They eat 50 aphids a day. Give them the 10 days. Mistake 2, stripping the garden bare at the end of the season. Most folks pull every plant, rake every leaf, leave the beds clean and brown for winter. That looks tidy. It also destroys the overwintering habitat for every beneficial insect you spent the whole year building up. The lacewings, the parasitic wasps, the ground beetles, they all need stems, leaf litter, and seed heads to make it through the cold months. The corrective is to leave at least one bed half-standing through winter. Don't pull the spent tomato plants, cut them off at the soil line, and drop the stalks right there in the bed. Chop and drop. The roots feed the worms, the stalks shelter the bugs, and come spring, your predator population is already on site, ready to go. Mistake 3. Planting the same family in the same spot every year. Tomatoes in the same corner 3 years running concentrates the soil-borne pests that target that family until even a crowded mixed bed can't outpace the load. The corrective is a 3-year minimum rotation on the tomato family. Move the tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and potatoes to a different bed each season, and don't put them back where they started for 3 full years. All right, the 4th step. The one I told you at the start costs about $1. It's a packet of sweet alyssum seeds, Lobularia maritima if you want the Latin name. $1.29 at the hardware store down the street from my house. One packet covers about 50 square feet, which is more bed space than I have in both of my raised beds put together, and it does more pest work than any sprayer you'll ever buy. Here's the mechanism, because the why matters. Sweet alyssum puts out tiny white flowers, hundreds of them, low to the ground in a sort of foaming mat. Those flowers are too small for honeybees to bother with, but they're exactly the right size to feed the adult stages of 2 insects that do the heavy lifting in any garden: hoverflies and tiny parasitic wasps. The adults eat the alyssum nectar. They lay their eggs on your plants, and the larvae, the things that hatch out, eat aphids, thrips, and small caterpillars. A single hoverfly larva eats more than 150 aphids a week. One larva, 1 week, and alyssum keeps flowering from 6 weeks after sowing until first frost, so that predator population just stays on site, eating, all season long. The timing is the easy part. The same day I transplant my tomatoes, I scatter 1 packet of alyssum seed across both beds, broadcast it by hand, no soil prep, no thinning, no covering, water it in. 6 weeks later, it's blooming. By July, the hoverflies have found it. By August, the aphids are somebody else's problem. I learned this from Gloria. She runs a narrow strip of alyssum along the front rail of her balcony in a planter no wider than my hand, and her tomatoes haven't had a real aphid problem in 15 years. The reason nobody talks about this is honestly because there's no money in it. A $1.29 seed packet doesn't fund a garden center display. A $9 bottle of spray does. The spray kills the larva. The alyssum feeds it. For the cost of a cup of coffee, you get a permanent on-site predator army that shows up before the pests do. Before I send you off, if you're sitting there thinking, "This all sounds great, Jake, but my garden isn't built like this yet. What do I do when the aphids show up next Tuesday?" That's exactly what Chapter 10 of the book is for. It's called Troubleshooting, and it walks you through the real-world fixes for the moments when your predator population hasn't established yet. Fungus gnats in containers, aphid spot treatments that don't wipe out the good bugs, what to do when your seedlings are getting hit and you don't have 6 weeks to wait. It's the safety net while you're building the system. The whole guide is $17 at backyardbuddybooks.com. If you're on the TV, the QR code is right there on the screen. Grab your phone and point it. If you're on your phone already, the link is in the description. Take a moment, pull it up, I'll be right here. And that's the whole thing. 47 pounds off 2 plants, no spray, no fight, just a bed built to make pests give up and look somewhere else. If you do one thing this week, make it the alyssum packet. Sow it, water it, walk away. That's the entry point. If you want to see how I built the bed underneath all of this in the first place, the no dig sheet mulching video is the one I'd send you to next. It's the foundation everything I showed you today sits on top of. Until next time, keep growing your own food, my friend.